Hello guys, we are answering computer science Cameroon GCE June 2000 and paper 3, the programming section. A plotting program, program development, describing the tasks. Many interesting programming problems involving nested loops can be encountered when creating plots using a printer. Your task is to create the plot in figure 1 pyramid in a general manner with the size of the base entered at the beginning of program execution. So here is the pyramid. This is figure 1, the pyramid. So our task is to create this pyramid. So let's follow the instructions on how these pyramids will be created. Arrays are not used to do this, so we are not supposed to use arrays. The grid lines are just to ease working with the figure. The lines are not directly used to answer any question. So these grid lines, as you see here, like an array, a 2D array, they are just to show us how we can go about constructing it. So we don't need the lines. A pyramid has a number of stars at its base called max number of stars. So it has a number of stars at its base, this one. So the number of stars at the base of the pyramid, we call it max number of stars. And it's made up of rows of spaces and stars. So rows of spaces, look at the first row. 5 spaces, 1 star, 4 spaces, 3 stars, 3 spaces, 5 stars. Each line of the pyramid is made up of an odd number of leading spaces. So each line of the pyramid, this is a leading spaces. So each line is made up of an odd number of leading spaces. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leading spaces for the first line. There are blanks after the stars, but they are not important for this exercise. The blanks after the stars are not important for this exercise. We ignore them. Here is the base of the pyramid. The star for the first line. This is the star of the first line. Problem understanding. So this session has 8 marks. So they are going to ask us questions we'll write in our answer sheet to test our understanding of the problem. So you don't need to write any program here. A solution to this problem is outlined in the following algorithm. Initialize number of spaces and stars. Repeat for the current line, output leading spaces, output line of stars. Adjust number of spaces and stars for the next line until number of stars is the number required. Mindful of the task description above, consider the pyramid of stars in figure 1 above and carry out the following. Romans 1. State the initial values for max number of stars. So given this pyramid, the max number of stars for the initial value here is, let's count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Romans 2. State the number of leading spaces and stars of the first line. For the first line, the number of leading spaces, if you count them, looking at the diagram, there are 5. And the number of stars is 1 for the first line. Romans 3. State the number of leading spaces and stars for the second line. For the second line, number of leading spaces, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Number of stars, 1, 2, 3. Romans 4. Between successive lines, the number of stars reduces while the number of leading spaces increases. So if we are leaving from bottom, top, from the base, moving up, number of stars reduces and the number of leading spaces increases. Hence, by what amount should you modify the number of spaces and number of stars before printing the next line in the pyramid if we print successive rows from the top of the pyramid? So the number of spaces decreases by 1 and the number of stars increases by 2 as we move from the top of the pyramid to the base. Task 2. Program development. Choose either the Pascal or the C programming language to implement your plot of the pyramid of stars. So we have this pyramid of stars. We should use either C or Pascal language to implement it. Question number 2. Using a suitable editor of your choice, write the following functions or procedures. Romans 1. The procedure initialize max. That takes to initialize the variables max number of stars, number of spaces, and number of stars for the first line. So let's open our code editor and write this. Here is the prototype for our function. Question 2, Romans 1. The procedure initialize. To initialize variable, max number of stars, number of spaces, and number of stars for the first line. So here is the definition for the initialize function. We take the max number of stars and set the max number of stars. We take the number of spaces and update the number of spaces with the one passed to the function, the number of stars, and update the number of stars. Please keep it simple. It's for these 2 marks. Writing it this way, you grab these 2 marks. Romans 2. The procedure output leading spaces n spaces, which takes the number n spaces and output that number of leading spaces for a line on the screen. So output leading spaces, in this procedure, output leading spaces will take n spaces and print n spaces on the screen. So from this problem, take n spaces, you print them on the screen. So let's write the procedure. So with the second procedure, output leading spaces, it takes an integer number of spaces, and what it is doing, so I will minimize this. What it does is it will print this number of spaces using the for loop. It's going to print n spaces using the for loop. I think this is a straightforward. You start with from value 0, you will print the first space. If n is, let's say, 5, it's going to print from 0 to 4. And that will be 5 spaces, because we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That makes 5. Romans 3. The procedure output lines of stars, which takes the number of stars, the n stars, and output that number of stars for a line on the screen. So let's write this procedure. Output line of stars, just like output spaces. So it's going to print just the same logic, but this time it's printing the number of stars that have been specified as the argument, n stars, just the same as spaces. It prints the n stars. We'll keep it simple and we are getting our marks. Please don't try to look at the end of the program before you define some of these spaces. Romans 3, the procedure output line of stars. We have done that. Romans 4, the procedure adjust number of spaces, number of stars. Adjust the variable number of spaces and number of stars to the value used to print the next row of blanks and stars. Here is the procedure adjust, and here is the prototype for the procedure adjust. Adjust will take number of spaces, number of stars, and what it's going to do, it will take the number of spaces decreased by 1, and the number of stars, it will take the correct number of stars and add 2 to it. So that as we are leaving from line 1 to line 2, the number of spaces will go down to from 5 to 4. Number of stars will increase from 1 to 3. As we move to the next line, number of spaces drop from 4 to 3. Number of stars increases from 3 to 5. So this logic adjust keeps working. Question 3. Develop the algorithm given as pseudocode in task 1 as a main program that calls the procedures or functions you implemented in task 2. For it, the number of spaces, number of stars, and the max number of stars presented under task description are stored in global variables. Hint: the condition number of stars is the number required in the algorithm could be coded as number of stars greater than max number of stars. So here is the algorithm in task 1. You can see it here, the algorithm in task 1, and here is our pyramid. It says a solution to this problem is outlined in the following algorithm. Initialize the number of spaces and stars, repeat for the current line. Output leading spaces, we output the leading space. Output lines of stars, we output the lines of stars. Adjust number of spaces and the stars for the next line until the number of stars is the number required. So they said the number of stars is the number required in the hint section. We should take number of stars greater than equals to max number of stars as our condition. So they are giving us a hint on how to run this. So if you look at, I stepped this up and used a flowchart so that we could have some pictorial representation of this. So here it is the repeat. So the first thing we have to do, the initialize. We have to initialize the spaces and the star. We initialize number of stars, and we have to output the leading spaces. We output the leading spaces. We output lines of stars. We do adjust number of spaces and star for the next line. So we decrement the number of spaces and add the number of stars by 2, like in the hint as it was given to us. Here, number of stars, this star count, same as this star count, is greater than or max number of stars. But in C, we'll be implementing in C. In C, we are using a do while, so we have to make sure that we will do while the number of stars is less than max number of stars. So they are saying that number of stars, number of spaces, number of stars, max number of stars should be global variables, should be stored as global variables. So let's look at this implementation. Let's try and look at it with our C. So for the first thing, we put the number of stars, our variables as global variables. So max number of stars, number of spaces, and number of stars, these are global variables. Please, I had to put this underscore to differentiate these global variables with the name of the local variables and to put some certain order them. So if you look at initialize, which means we just come and then put the initialize. So we have to come back and modify our initialize functions, where max number of stars is what we are going to modify. Number of spaces, we modify. Number of stars, we modify. But there is this the max number of spaces. If we know the number of stars at the base, we can compute the max number of spaces to be there is that formula, you guys can check it, to be max number of stars minus 1 divided by 2. So number of spaces, leading spaces, we can adjust it that way. So that is it. Let's try and implement this logic. Number of stars at the base is 11, and the number of spaces is 5. Number of stars of the first is 1, and then we'll call our, so we have done the first step, initialize. Let's look at the second step, output leading number of spaces. We call output leading number of spaces. So we call output leading number of spaces, and we pass it the number of spaces at the top. This number of spaces, know they were initialized using this function. When we call initialize, we pass it this value. Is going to set max number of spaces to the value we pass through here, and number of spaces, we will set it, but we are no longer using this file. We are just modifying it from the input number of spaces at the base, number of stars. So initialization does that job. So when we call output leading number of spaces, we cannot see anything yet because it's just going to print spaces. So the next thing we call output line of stars. We give it a number of stars. The next we call adjust. Adjust takes number of spaces and number of stars. So for the current number of spaces, number of stars, and reset them. So after printing an entire line, we need to skip to the next line. So we have to check this condition. This is where the do while loop. We see 1, 2, 3 instructions are in the do while loop. So I will just have to put the do, put my instructions in the do while loop. So what is the condition? While number of stars is less than max number of stars. So let's run this program. Oh, our program is not really working well. It's because we need to adjust number of spaces to be like what we have as global variables. So we need an underscore here, underscore here. Remember, when we initially wrote this function, it was to get our max. Now that we are writing the functions, we are forced to do some modifications to meet with our requirement for this program. So I run this again. So if you look at the outputs, our program, look at the output, our program works well. So with a value of 11, compare it with this pyramid here. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. It works well. Task 3, executing your program. Run your program for a pyramid of base 7 and test it to make sure that it works correctly. So let's run it. Screenshot the output, blah blah blah, and so screenshot, you should know how to do it. So let's run this program with base value of 7. So it's working, the base is 7. Our program is okay with the base value of 7 by altering it here. Task 4, modify your program so that it asks the user to enter an odd positive integer, and then it displays a diamond of stars based on that number. For example, the number 7 will reproduce. So if the user enters 7, it will print 7 as the base number of stars, an inverted pyramid below, and the other type above. So we have to run this. We have to modify the program to perform this. So let's move in a step by step. So we could call this function. So I will just copy this same stuff back. And so I will copy it back. So I will define another function which I will call adjust down. So I will adjust down first. After adjusting down means I will decrement. So let me define adjust down. So in my adjust down, this is my definition for adjust down. In my adjust down, here is it. It takes number of spaces, number of stars. Look at it. In the adjust down, the number of stars decreases by 2 from 7 to 5. The number of spaces increases by 1. That is why we have the number of spaces, we increase them by 1. The number of stars we decrement by 2. So if I call my adjust down here, so let's run this program again. There is a problem because we need to modify the number of stars. So at this level, while the number of stars is greater than, so until we hit while it is greater than 1 should be the condition. So we'll keep doing it while the number of stars is greater than 1. So that is it. Wow, there is a little problem. You see, this is printed twice. It's because by the time we are leaving this first do while loop, the number of stars, we need to reset it, and the number of leading spaces, we need to reset them. So resetting the number of stars, look at the diagram. So by the time we are leaving this loop, the number of spaces should be 0, and the number of stars already should be the maximum number of stars. The number of stars at the base, and we start decreasing. So adjust is going to decrease them. So let's run the program again. If we compare this with the old one that we ran, you can see that these double stars, we don't have them. These double lines, we don't have them. It's a single line, and our program is working. Run your program for a pyramid of base 7 and test it to make sure that it works correctly. Modify your program so that it asks the user to enter an odd positive number. So let's modify this program to collect input from the user. So this is a modification of the program so that it gets input from the user. So we ask the user to enter the number of stars at the base, get the number of stars, store it at the base. So initialize will take the base, and it will offset the number of spaces. We have already seen how initialize does that. So let's run this program again. Enter the number of stars at the base, enter 7, and it prints that. So here is the entire source code. These are a list of functions we have used. This is the output. So run the program with this with a base of 7. Test it to make sure it works correctly. Do the screenshot of your program and save in the file name tax3. Also print the screenshot, print a copy of your program source code. So good luck, guys.